Hi, my name's Judy Lipson. My private practice is called Spiral Wisdom LLC. Really glad you came to join me. I have other small videos on my website and on YouTube, and I'm really glad that you came along to learn a little bit about polyvagal theory. So, when I first started in the therapy field, both as a client and also in learning about therapy and practicing therapy, nobody talked about the body back then. We talked about the thoughts that are in my head, the feelings that I'm experiencing. That's where anxiety, stress, and all the other aspects of issues and how to get beyond it in therapy, that's where we focus. And that made sense. And then I'm not sure how many years ago I started learning about some different somatic therapy possibilities. In full disclosure, I am not trained as a somatic therapist. I am fascinated by the concept. I have benefited from attending conferences and watching videos and attending courses and reading all about polyvagal theory and how the body is really, it all starts in the body. So let me just share some of what I've learned so that you can also have some knowledge about this, because I think it's just so fascinating. And again, what we think about, it is important to start reframing how we think about things, not create story about it and so forth. Those are all really beneficial in dealing with the feelings we have, but also realizing that it's in our body. So it starts in, well, okay, so first of all, I'm not a medical person. I'm not a scientist or a neuroscientist. I'm going to give you the Judy Lipson version of what I understand. So I don't know that it exactly starts in the amygdala, but for me, things start in the amygdala. So that's a little part in the back of our brain, in the primitive part of our brain. And I guess actually there's two of them. And oh man, I think it was Dan Levin. I keep forgetting who it was, who made this really interesting model of this is our amygdala tucked inside the back of our brain. And then this here is our prefrontal cortex, which is where all those executive functioning things happen. That's the stuff that is troublesome for ADHD folks. And it's the stuff that is what makes a really good secretary a good secretary. Details, organization, time management, all the little nitty-gritty things of life. And then this part here is the processing part of our brain that deals with comprehension, attention, memory, and those kinds of things. And when the amygdala gets triggered, it kind of puts all this stuff sort of offline so that we're not sitting there and thinking, there is a bear. Should I run this way or should I run that way? Should I pick up this stick, but it's too big and it may not be able to be picked up, or this one's a little bit too small and it's going to crack on the bear and it's going to break, and what good is that? And the idea is that if you start doing that regarding a bear coming, you've just wasted a lot of really beneficial time. If you had a choice and a chance, and you're done. Okay. So we don't want to overthink things and even think about things. We narrow that focus so that we can deal with that true dangerous issue and go to fight and flight, or for some people, it's freeze and shut down. So that was like this huge, big, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense, that when we are under stress and we're dealing with a lot of anxiety, now we have more difficulty learning. It explains so much about the difficulties that our kids and students have when they're under stress or when we put them on the spot. Oh, by the way, the amygdala did not evolve. The amygdala thinks everything is the bear, thinks everything is grave danger, where really what's going on is maybe it's the teacher saying, hey, I'd like to see you after school, or the boss who says, I need to talk with you this afternoon. And our little amygdala goes, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my job. Oh my gosh, I'm going to get an E in this class and they're going to call my mom and I'm not going to be able to go where I want to go this weekend. And that's the thinking stuff we need to address, right? But let's also pay attention to what's happening in the body. Okay, so new stuff I've been learning with polyvagal. So there's this vagus nerve that travels from the brain all the way down our body through our whole torso, and it impacts all the different organs, the brain, the eyes, the mouth, the throat, the vocal cords, the lungs, the heart, the stomach, the intestines, the bladder, everything. So think in terms of what are the more common symptoms, issues that we deal with when we're really under stress or a lot of anxiety. And we get sweaty palms, we get heart palpitations or a fast heart, we get shallow breathing oftentimes, which is also because we get all scrunched up like this because we're ready for fight and flight. But we have nowhere to go because there truly isn't a danger in that case. We have stomach upset. You get the gist. Okay. So this vagus nerve is sending information from our brain through our body and also is carrying information back up from the body to the brain. So there's this beautiful back and forth of information and body response. Sounds like a good way to describe it. So the next piece that I've been learning about is this idea that as the vagus nerve is going back and forth, one of the great regulators of our body is our breath. And what the breath does is on an inhale, we bring energy into our system. And as we exhale, we calm back down. Then we inhale energy and we exhale calm. So we constantly have this ready, balanced flow of energy and calm that just continues on a regular basis until the amygdala gets pinged by anything in the five senses, our emotions, other people's emotions, the energy of our environment, or any number of things that in nanoseconds is coming to the amygdala so the amygdala can sit back and go, am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? And it unfortunately determines that I'm not safe, and it sets up the whole cascade of things in the body to be able to fight or flight, run away, or fight off whatever this danger is perceived to be. So the next piece of the polyvagal theory that I learned, and by the way, polyvagal theory was developed, I think in the 80s or 90s by a neuroscientist named Dr. Stephen Porges, Porges. And his stuff is brilliant. And when I first learned about it, I just knew that it had great meaning, but it was really, really hard for me to understand. And I didn't have the time to get into it and really study it. And I just kind of sat in the wings of, that's really important someday. Well, I don't know how many years later, someday finally came in the last year, where an individual that I know, a professional who has been studying polyvagal theory, took the deep dive and really learned about it. And I have been taking her classes, just to give you an idea how long it took me to figure it out. And I don't think it's going to take you this long. It was one 20-week class that was an hour and a half a week. And then a 10-week class where we also learned about another thing that Stephen Porges teaches, which is the safe and sound protocol. Maybe at a future time, I'll talk about that because I'm getting trained in it, but haven't taken the coursework yet. And then right now we're in Polyvagal 2.0, and we're learning more from the same, I'm learning more from the same teacher. So Stephen Porges' stuff is kind of hard to understand, and it's more of the medical and biological stuff, which is super important. But how does that apply with people and clinically? And that's the work of another individual named Deb Dana, D-A-N-A. And she's amazing. And I think I actually was fortunate to sit in one course of hers years ago, before I even knew how amazing she really is. And she created this flip chart, which I'll show you the front. It's called, big surprise, the Polyvagal Flip Chart, Understanding the Science of Safety. And she's written books. She does lots and lots of webinars. You'll find her on YouTube and so forth. And what's really cool, excuse me, is when you open it up, and this is the page I'm going to talk about, there's lots and lots of different graphics and things. And so if, for instance, I'm showing it to you, this is what I'm seeing. So I have information at hand for me so that I can be talking to you, and I've got sort of the cheat sheet on the other side. But I'm just going to talk to you about what I've learned. So this is about the autonomic ladder, which, and I'm going to kind of ignore what it says over here. You may be able to see close enough that you can read it, and that's cool, but I'm going to just talk about it. So in the autonomic ladder, what we understand is there are 3 basic levels. And there's not going to be a quiz. Don't worry about the names. But it is interesting how, as we start to name these aspects of our experiences, it kind of helps to sort of put it over there. And I'm not taking that, I don't know if it's responsibility. It's sometimes we almost feel this sense of like guilt or shame or embarrassment, like, oh my God, I'm this anxious person. And I go into fight and flight and I start yelling and I have panic attacks. But this kind of allows me to realize that all of this is what's physiologically happening. I don't choose. And the good news is there are things that we can do to help it. So let's talk. So in the autonomic ladder, we start with the top portion, which is the calm and connected. Okay, remember we've got the balance of energy coming into the system and calming back down and back and forth. And when we're balanced, we're in this ventral vagal. You're not going to have a test, which is calm and connected. If, however, we start getting anxious and so forth, we drop into the sympathetic of fight and flight. And if, this is an interesting thing, which I didn't used to know about, but if our body, our being, our essence somehow determines that fight and flight is not sufficient, it doesn't get the job done or never did get the job done, then sometimes we just drop straight through fight and flight and we go into dorsal collapse shutdown. We don't choose. This is not something we choose. If you know of someone who drops into collapse shutdown, which could look like they can barely get out of bed, that child who's had a meltdown, could be an adult, and is on the floor and is barely talking, can barely move, or somebody who's in a chair and can't talk and can barely move, they're in dorsal shutdown. That's not by choice. It's for whatever reason, their being determined that fight and flight wasn't going to do the job and they needed to drop into freeze and collapse. So in all honesty, I'm still learning about dorsal. Fight and flight is something I have great familiarity with, but dorsal, not so much. And I'm still learning about this. So one of the really cool things that has really had great meaning for me and so many of my clients as we talk about this is that with understanding the autonomic ladder, as a person who used to go into fight and flight, what I always thought was, well, I'm either having calm and connected, great feeling, or I'm down here in panic, right? And I always thought it was like, boom, one or the other. But part of the autonomic ladder is to show us that there's a gradation, that even in my calm connected, there are levels. So I could be dropping away from my super calm connected, not yet in fight and flight, and then I begin to drop into fight and flight sympathetic, and it could get more strong, harder, worse, whatever words we want to use there. So then what we realize is that I can move back up to calm connected. And what I do is I find that one small thing. What's that next small thing that I can do? What are those strategies that you've already learned about that help you to calm your system? All those good self-care things. Breathing. Inhale, focus on the exhale for calming. Relaxing the body, drop your shoulders away from your ears. Get lots of rest and restorative time when you can. Good nutrition and hydration. Exercise, movement. Bessel van der Kolk, who's a trauma therapist, always talks about motion moves emotions. It helps get it out of our system so we can talk about it and address it. If you or somebody you know drops into this dorsal collapse shutdown stage, this is the stage that primarily needs energy. It needs movement. We need to bring energy into the system. So what we do here is we focus on the inhalation of the breath. We're focusing on bringing energy in, but let's not forget the calm, because otherwise you're going to drop or move up into this fight and flight, which is not a comfortable feeling. So if you're here, you want to focus on that inhale to bring energy, but don't forget to focus on the calming also. If you're here, you don't need more energy in your system. You're still going to breathe in, but focus on the exhale for calming and movement and so forth. One other thing that I wanted to mention is that there are blended states. Just learning about this piece. This stuff is so awesome and so rich. There's so much to it. So there may be another one of these little YouTube webinars that I offer to help you understand a little bit more once I understand a little bit more. But what's cool is there are blended states. So when you blend this calm and connected with the energy, you've got play, you've got joy, you've got fun. When you blend the calm and connected with this more relaxed, what we tend to think of as a shutdown collapse state, but when it's not all the way into shutdown collapse and you blend these two, you've got sacred stillness. I never realized that. That's that space that I love in meditation and journey, that place where you like leave your body and everything is just so, right? That's this blend of your ventral with your dorsal. Play, sacred stillness. So there's so much in play with these things, so much to learn about. And remembering that when you start to feel yourself dropping out of your calm, connected space, start to pay attention to it. You don't have to wait until you're in full anxious or full collapse mode. You can start to pay attention to, oh, this is starting to drop a little bit. What's one small thing I can do to help move myself up my autonomic ladder? Then what's the next one small thing that I can move myself up? And paying attention to those that you love who really struggle with emotional regulation, and when they're dysregulated, to help them to see some of these pieces. So thanks for tuning in. I'm glad that you were listening, and I hope that you learned a little bit about Deb Dana and Stephen Porges' work about the autonomic ladder and polyvagal theory. If you've got questions, feel free to look them up. That's the source. But feel free to shoot me an email, ask me some questions. I'm not trying to sell myself right now, but I do offer one-on-one, and I'd love to do some group work. Sessions with people to help understand some of this stuff better so that we can all find that ease and that gentleness, because we all need it, we all want it, we all deserve it, and heck, these are kind of tough times right now. It's 2022, by the way, right now, in case anybody's wondering. So thanks for tuning in. Judy Lipson from Spiral Wisdom LLC. There's lots more information on my website, spiralwisdom.com. You can also find it at judylipson.com. I've got, at this time, over 100 articles. I do a monthly newsletter that you can sign up for, which is at the bottom of the homepage, the sign up. Newsletter archives, there's a link at the top of the webpage of my homepage. So it was a delight to meet y'all, and see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.